God, bless us this morning as we share, as we reflect. May you speak to us. May we hear you speak to each of us as you do to our hearts, as we do stand and remain open to you, the one truly safe place where we can afford to be completely open. May your words speak to us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. So, I really enjoyed Ross's message last week, for those of you who are here. I was watching it in the airport in Brisbane on a tiny little screen after the fact, I'll admit. But I enjoyed it nonetheless. I'm sure it would have been even better in 3D. But I appreciated that. We were down, I was up at the annual Youth for Christ board meeting up in Brisbane. And it's a lot of hours of board meeting when you're doing an in-person retreat. That doesn't mean it wasn't a fruitful time. Youth for Christ have got their new CEO who's just kind of started up, a lovely young chap. No looking at spoilers, everyone, don't look up there yet. Fantastic, passionate young man who's just absolutely fired up for finding out how can we, believe it or not, connect the youth with the gospel. Youth who are searching for it. And we see that, and all the trends are showing that this generation are very discerning. That was part of what we talked about, was that perhaps ironically, perhaps it makes sense. This generation who, will watch 1,000 videos a day between their other activities on TikTok and Instagram, 4-second, 5-second videos, the input that they get, all the AI-generated videos, articles, data, news reports. Ironically, they haven't gotten completely confused. I think that's part of it. Me too. But also, we're seeing that a lot of them are becoming quite discerning very rapidly. They've learnt that all of this conflicting stuff can't all be true, and so they've got a real good nose for picking hypocrisy or stuff that just doesn't make sense. And I think it's somewhat despairing, because amongst all of that, there's very little that actually holds up to decent scrutiny, and it can be a hard place. But as part of that, we were talking about how do we connect with them in a way where what we can put first is authenticity. Authenticity actually came up. So part of when I preached the week before that, we're talking about waiting. We're in this in-between period before we've kind of got this report that we're waiting on that's going to reflect part of what we as a congregation have kind of shared. And so I was saying, well, I don't want to preempt anything in the way that I'm talking when I was talking to Naomi and Bruce. And so Bruce very helpfully gave me some preliminary stuff, said these are a couple of topics that have come out that are obviously very relevant and on the heart of your church. And all of them, I will say, were encouraging, and he gave, some encouraging themes. But one of the top ones that came out that I was quite proud of was authenticity. And sincerity is something that we value in our community, in our leadership, in our spiritual journey. And so I think across the board, a push towards finding truth that sometimes feels like a flicker and a shadow when we look around the world today has become a really critical and important thing. I think it's more important than that. But I've got a test. You're not getting off that easy, all right? So we're going to have a test. Because I've failed several of these, but have you seen kind of AI-generated stuff online and around the place? Yeah, I think most people would have by now. And the reality is, we've all seen more than we know, because we don't always pick it, do we? But I just thought I'd run through a couple of test ones. So one of these is a real photo, and one of them is being completely generated by a computer based off text and data. So which one do you reckon it is? If you want, you can point, this way or that way to the one that you think is correct, or you can internally kind of keep yourself safe and just kind of make an internal vote. All right. Which one is it, Toby? That one. So this one on this side is the fake one. And there's some simplicity in it. So that's one of the things you can kind of pick. And they've often got really vibrant colors, I think, often AI images at the moment. All right, what's the next one? Let's do another one. Which one of these? Look at these gorgeous kids. Well, no, some of them are evil AI robots in disguise. Which one? Which one, though? Which one are we going to lend to Kids Church? It is this one. It's reversed for me. You can look, the hands, some of those fingers don't really make sense there. It kind of misses some bits and pieces. And they all look kind of airbrushed, don't they? As if kids need that. Fantastic. Let's do another one. All right. Which one of these? Yeah. All right, let's see. Yeah. Some of the details are wrong. The lighting doesn't make sense. The sun's coming from behind, but the reflections are coming through and on the other side as well. Very good. All right. Next one, Toby. All right, here you go. This one's a bit trickier. Which one? Which one do you think? I can't remember now. Now I'm scrambling. Just trying to remember. Has everyone got an answer locked in? This one's tricky. Let's give it a bit more time. You all right? Which is that one there? Okay. All right. Toby. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Some of this stuff doesn't really make sense. It's not how it is in real life. Look at the detail. There's no detail on those leaves are there. These ones are all messy and kind of scratchy and scrappy. They are remarkable, though, aren't they? Is there another one? I can't remember. Oh, here we are. Here we are. Which one of these is headed for space? And which one of these is a bunch of pixels? What do you reckon? This one's a bit harder. I think there's less details in this one. All right, let's have a look. This one's a real one. And again, there's a lot more scrap and dirt and detail on this one. What's that? Oh, they're the same every time. Well, I'll tell you, that was random because I put them on, but obviously I didn't check to make sure that they were messed up enough. All right, which group of these lovely ladies are actually campaigning for a robot takeover? What do you reckon? Right's real? All right. There you go. And you can look, you probably can't see from there, it really struggles with words. It can't quite figure out writing very well at the moment. So none of that makes sense. It's all gibberish. Lots of things are blurred and things like that. Whereas this, if you zoom in, you can kind of make out words. Is there another one? All right, that's it. So, actually, I'm not even here. No, that's not true. I'm really here. Who reckon they did pretty well out of that? Did anyone reckon they got more than half? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Yeah? Does anyone reckon they got most of them? Yeah? Yeah, okay. See, it's interesting. It's interesting where certain people have kind of got a higher discernment. I reckon my kids would do better than I would. And I reckon, you know Liz is marking assignments. So she's marking assignments at La Trobe for some of their subjects. She's been doing some teaching. She's marking a lot of assignments. She's marking a lot of AI-created assignments. And she's become really good at learning the voice of different AIs and the way they do stuff. But it's incredible. You can type in, the essay question, and it will run you through the whole thing with reference and all sorts of things. It's just... And these pictures were from I think they're 2 years old. So technology since then is 10 times better. Now you've got videos that are indiscernible. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on this. I think this is really important. I think this is something we all need to be really aware of because you cannot trust the videos you see and stuff. But who can trust them slightly more? Is the youth who've gotten really good at kind of picking up on some of these things. Now, that's not to say that you run stuff past the youth, but authenticity, detecting that. It was often the subtle things, especially at faces and people, that we can pick up when we think there's something, I can't even say what it is, but there's something uncanny there. There's something that doesn't feel quite real about what's going on here. So, authenticity. We put that up as one of our highest values, something that we really value as a church. And I was really encouraged by that. I think that is actually an excellent choice. When we think about authenticity as a kind of a character quality or maybe a practice, I can't think of a range of sermons that I've heard on the topic. You don't think of any particular chapter in Romans where he talks about authenticity as a topic. It's not one of the fruits of the Spirit or the armor of God or things like that explicitly. It's not explicitly stated as such. But I would actually argue that I think, in a sense, it can be more important than those things as a prerequisite. I think it was fantastic that we had the song open into this. Where do we see it? So authenticity, sincerity, this idea of what you see is what you get kind of a thing. Where do we see that as a positive quality in the Bible? Maybe you can think of some different stories or places. One place my mind often goes to is Nathaniel. When Nathaniel, the disciple, is kind of his brother brings him along. Come on, you've got to see this Jesus guy. It's incredible. Come along and see him. And it says that when Jesus saw Nathaniel approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And I think that's core to the definition that we are looking for, is a lack of pretense, masking, faking, being deceptive, and honesty throughout. Sincerity is often one of the pseudo-synonymous words. In that psalm that we read, actually in communion, it talked about God, depending on the translation, God desiring truth in our inward being, consistency in that. So one of the things that we can think about is, what is sincerity or integrity? So if sincerity is about acting according to what you believe, integrity means that this is what I say and this is what I do. My actions flow on from what I say and what I believe about myself. That is a valuable thing, often, but not always. I remember we had at a previous church, we had this new guy rock up. Fantastic! It's always good. We had quite a large young adults group. We had this young adult who'd rocked up. He was connected in with one of the others, and had connected in to come along and kind of join in, take part in the group. And so, of course, I was very excited to meet him and make sure that he was getting integrated and connected with the others. And so I said, "Oh, my name's Josh. What's your name?" And he said, I knew that he'd come from a missions background, so he'd come from somewhere overseas. He said, "Well, my name's Barbie." And so I didn't hesitate for too long, I think. I said, "Okay, Barbie." And he kind of looked at me, and I thought, "Oh no, I've already kind of offended this poor guy." Maybe, in his country, that's like a very normal, sensible, male, non-doll related name. That's fine. And so I thought, I'm going to make sure that I introduce this guy, make sure he gets connected in, and that I'm kind of there to kind of make sure that nobody's kind of staring at him or making fun of him or something like that. So I took him around. "This is Barbie," and don't make any comment. That's fine. That's just his name. And I must have taken him around half the church, making sure he was connected in, being very clear about what his name was before, of course, the person that brought him along pulled me aside and said that he had an American accent and that his name was Bobby, and that I'd been mocking him in front of everyone the whole time. He's a fantastic guy. Yes. But I was acting in accordance with my sincerely held beliefs. It doesn't mean I didn't make a great buffoon of myself. And I did apologize. Sincerity alone is not quite enough. Integrity with your beliefs isn't going to do you much good if you are just not that clever, or you haven't got it right. You think about the Emperor's New Clothes, or that partnership with NASA and the British group when they were kind of making this space probe. All of their measurements were well measured and sincere, but when they forgot to convert imperial to metric, $125 million probe down the drain. Thinking you're right is not quite enough. All right, honesty. So honesty in terms of having the truth and bearing that forward as part of it. What does that look like? I think that gets us closer to authenticity in a Christian sense of being authentic. Just because someone is speaking without the aim of deceiving other people, though, doesn't mean that they have admirable authenticity. Just because someone is speaking what they would classify in, or even what is maybe unfiltered truth, it doesn't automatically convey Christian authenticity or love. In fact, when you think about someone who is unabashed and unashamed in sharing the truth, often I think of certain prickly people. People who say things, who start off sentences with no offense, but, people, who kind of, that's their kind of bread and butter, or I'm just being honest, In our house, we've got some very intelligent, attentive, well-spoken young ladies, and I'm very grateful for them. Part of our raising them and teaching them about being compassionately authentic is not been a big problem with lying. We've been very grateful in that. They're usually pretty honest. The problem has more been about when honesty is not helpful. We've got a shorthand phrase where we say, TNH, true, not helpful. Like, way behind on schedule for school, and they're just not getting through their Weet-Bix. They've been sitting there for 45 minutes. And then, one of the very intelligent young members of our family comes up and says, do you know that in just half an hour, it just takes half an hour for lukewarm milk to develop negative bacteria? Maybe true. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. There's a lot of them. And I'm not going to say the rest because I didn't get permission. And we see this a lot. How often, when the Pharisee saw the sinful woman washing Jesus' feet and says, if Jesus knew that she was a sinful woman, if he had any prophetic ability, then he wouldn't have done it. Technically, it's true, but he missed the whole point. He'd missed it. Truth itself can be superficial and can miss deeper truth. It is not a justification. I'm sure you can think of some of the times when people have said stuff to you that has really damaged you and hurt you. My hunch would be that for a lot of those things, what made it painful was that it was sincere and that it had truth in it, but it was delivered without grace or harshly. So something being sincere and being true also doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be helpful. James, in James 3, he goes on a full thing talking about tongues, and obviously by that talking about speaking. When you put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, you can turn the whole animal. You put the bit in the mouth, so you can turn the whole animal, make it go where it needs to go. Or take ships. They're so large, they're driven by strong winds, but they're steered by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants to go. The tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what great forest can be set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil amongst the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole thing, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and itself is set on fire by hell. I just want to add some emphasis there. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and be tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. Honesty itself doesn't always get us there. The reality is that if we believe sincerely and we speak honestly, we still have to contend with the deceitfulness of our own hearts, the lies that we believe without knowing, the truths that we have heard but not understood. Jeremiah, the heart is deceitful above all things. James, be doers, not just hearers. You're deceiving yourself. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, then he is tricked himself. Authenticity, we talked about being about a lack of pretense, not pretending, not having those kind of guards up. No mask or deception or hiding. So how do we gain access to this as a virtue that builds us up? What would it look like for it to be a complete authenticity? I think would be something that we look forward to, wouldn't it? Of a time when we are fully restored in our hearts, when we can stand face to face before God. Would that not be full authenticity? Would it be to stand face to face with God? And we know as we stand, we live in this fallen world, that we are not there yet, that we are in this process. We are saved, but we are still growing and we are gaining. So what does authenticity look like for us today? How can we nurture and foster a community and a culture of authenticity? I like to think about it a bit like a garden. Now, follow me with this, if you would. The fruits of the Spirit. When we have the Spirit dwelling within us, then these fruits come out. Peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. We see these things come out as manifestations of what it means to be Christian. We see those things kind of begin to happen in us. We think about the armor of God, the list of things, we have the belt of truth, which I think fits very well with authenticity. The helmet of salvation, the sneakers of peace, and, we've got different bits and parts of the armor that are our tools that we use to shield us from the barbs of the evil one, to lead us on towards the fulfillment until that day when we can lay down the sword. I like to think of if our hearts are a garden that God has appointed, and the fruits of the Spirit are what grow when the Spirit is working with us in that garden, then I would say that authenticity is the posture or the attitude or the act of tending to the garden in your heart, the garden that grows the fruits. To tend to the garden in our hearts takes a couple of things. I think you need to let go of a bunch of other things that can often seem a priority. Maybe this metaphor is connected to the inevitable state of most gardens that I've had a crack at, where other things take over and it ends up pretty dry and crackly. When we are inauthentic, we build walls of pretense around our heart that block others, that block God, and can even block ourselves from seeing what's going on. The garden is in disrepair. It can get cracked and dry with despair. It can be choked with weeds of shame, of self-doubt that kill off any fruitful plants. Perhaps we have a verdant, green, overflowing garden that we can see very clearly is much better than the one of the person next to us. And we have built for ourselves a very satisfying, good-looking garden. Chances are, it's probably plastic plants, that we put up, that we put forward, that we can kind of maintain as a mask and a facade. And it doesn't matter how good quality they are, they're never going to produce real fruit. The tastiest looking wax apple is not going to fill up your tummy too good. Christian authenticity is not a static state of perfect openness and congruence with God. That is our aspiration. That is our hope that we aim towards. What is faith? Faith is hope not yet realized. It's what we see. It is a substance of things not yet achieved. Authenticity then is rather a process of and a posture towards peeling back the layers of pretense, of lies, of defense that we all learn to put up to protect ourselves in this prickly, sinful world. It is a courageous work, the work of taking off masks, the masks that we wear to fit in with people around us, finding the freedom of identity that's given to us by the one who loves us and made us. It's a deconstruction of the walls of shame and judgment that we build. Authenticity makes courageous trades like pride for humility, the appearance of good character for the testimony of God's grace, judging right and wrong with having a relationship with truth incarnate, Jesus himself. In my experience, I would say this as perhaps a disclaimer. The people who I think of as people who have what I would call an authentic faith, so the people that come to mind for me, I can think of people who have a story of faith that to me, like the AI images, comes as true. Similar maybe to those AI images, it's often not the more perfect one or the easy one. When I think of people with an authentic faith, I think of people who have often wrestled with God and have sat with doubt and struggle, pain and suffering. I think of people who have gone through the sacrifice of confessing sins and failures to those around them, to trusted other Christians and to God. I often think of people who've had winding paths in their lives where God has led them to difficult places and to hard places and through sometimes dark valleys of suffering, sacrifice, or the shadow of death itself. People with an authentic faith often seemed practiced at patience and have a faith that has taken time. It seems to be one of the ingredients that seems to come with an authentic faith. It seems to me that an authentic faith is more grown than built. And the fruits are the fruits of the Spirit that we see. Practically speaking, I'll put it in my pocket so I don't knock it off again. Practically speaking, when we think about what does this mean for us, I think some of the things that come to mind are things like joining in with a Bible study group where you can relate to people in a place where you've got the choice to either remain distant from those you are connected with, those other brothers and sisters of grace who share the journey, or work through the process of building trust and learning to pull back the wall, bring down the walls, share about how you're really going, how you really feel, what you really think, what you're struggling with. Maybe confessing sins that are weighing you down, sharing that journey. I think that's a fantastic way. One of the best ways we can do that is by sharing fellowship with other people who are seeking to go deeper in their authentic faith. Another way I think that we can work on our authenticity is, I think, in the way that we share in our worship together. And I think it was magnificent that we had that song open right before, about opening our hearts. When we sing together, it's a place of opening. It is a place that does reach into our hearts. And when we sing, we share that together. I think worship can be a powerful way of us as a church entering deeper. I don't know if you've ever been at a church. This is kind of a side topic thing, but raising hands in worship. Raise your hand if you think that's... No, I'm not going to do that. Raising hands in worship. I don't know what kind of church that you grew up in. I went to a couple, but I remember the first time I went to a church where in worship, some people would raise their hands in worship. And I remember thinking, I don't know who's going to tell them, but you're probably going to have to wait till after the song to ask a question because we're right in the middle of something here, you know? It was an unusual thing. And I don't think that there was necessarily inauthenticity in the churches I've been at where there'd be worship where people weren't doing that. But I do remember, I remember a friend of mine joking at his church that they'd installed energy-saving lights. And there was some concern that during the worship, the lights might turn off because the motion sensor wasn't picking up anything. And I think sometimes there can be a certain sense of staticness. I don't think that is inauthentic. But when I look at other places, when I was in Sheffield and I went to the Church of Christ conference, I think they're about 70% international churches. And there was a vibrancy to that worship that was so open to connecting in with the experience that I think it can be a real aid to that. And yet, I've often sat in churches like that and thought, do I put my hand up or not? What will people think if I am over-enthusiastic in my worship? What will people think if I sing extra loud? What will people think if I, dance like David? I'm not going to strip off of my undies and dance through the streets. I think there's a time and a place. But what would it look like for us to be a place where we're safe to be authentic in a responsible, authentic and genuine way? Sometimes the questions that we ask even in church can be questions that reveal that sometimes there are blocks in ourselves about what we think about others and what they'll think of us as we seek to be authentic with God. And I think leadership as well. I think that as we receive this report and we look at all the different values, there comes with that a responsibility to continually reflect on what does it mean to be authentic in leadership? What does it mean to be authentic as a member of a leadership team and as a complete leadership team and as those called by God to be leading a way forward? How do we make sure that the extra things that come with leadership don't then also become an imposition, like with Saul, who was afraid of what his men would think of him if he'd kind of, followed through on what God called him to do? Perhaps the short answer is that I think that authenticity is a process, that authenticity is a posture and an attitude towards God that we have to work on and come back to, like growing a garden. And I think that is a magnificent picture and a magnificent thing for our church to value as we think about who and what do we want to be going ahead. I think we already are a beautiful testimony to God in the garden that we have, in the fruits that we see, in the people that we've got, in the Bible studies, in the sharing, in the confession, in the fellowship and the worship that we share. And to have a heart to continue to press into that together is a wonderful thing. Let me pray to finish up. As usual as well, because I keep forgetting to say it. If you have been moved and God is wanting to move you in authenticity, by all means, if you want to come up after the service and either talk to one of the leaders or myself, pray together, that'd be great. Very happy to do that. Let me pray. God, there is a lot of mess in our world. There is a lot of pain. There are a lot of dangerous situations, dangerous people. It is a world where the consequence of not having wholeness in you means that there will be pain, suffering, and lack until our hope is fulfilled and you come and make all things right. But as we work through this process, as we stand on the promise of your blood, as we meet with an open heart in worship together, in the laying open of our lives together before you, you meet us, Father. And you call us to work in the garden of our hearts, pulling up weeds, planting seeds. And we, in a sense, watch as fruits grow, even in ourselves. Father, I pray that you would give us eyes that seek you and you first and you at all costs. Father, I pray that you would give us hands that let go of things that bind us, the things that we hold that means that we cannot hold on to you, the masks that we put on for people, Father, that you would show them to us and help us to take them off. Father, the lies that we believe, that we share, and that we even put on other people, Father, we know that lies are like a shadow before the light of your truth. And I pray that we would be a church that speaks the truth in grace and love, that banishes the shadow.